Well, welcome for coming here to help us commemorate a special day today. I was born in Log House in Kentucky, February 12, 1809. I became the 16th President of the United States, and when I was in Congress before that, I told those assembled in Congress, fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. We will be remembered in spite of ourselves. Fiery trials which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor to the latest generation. Now we say we're for the Union. Lord will not forget that we say this. We hold the power and bear the responsibility. We may only save or easily lose the last best hope of earth. Now I said that to Congress. What do you think about that?
I believe it.
What do you think about that?
I believe you're right, President.
We all have the responsibility, all citizens, not just the Congress, we all have the responsibility to keep the Union together. Thank you for answering that. You know, over the years I've done several different monologues. It's on a movie that's just a one man talking about a story of Lincoln as Lincoln's ghost. And I have audio CDs and video DVDs about it for each year that I did. I did it for 4 years. And so you can buy those if you'd like, get them in one or get them all together, however you want to do it. We have them here available. Now, did you know that Abraham Lincoln, being the 16th president, was the only president out of all 45 that never had a patented invention? No.
Oh!
Well, he did. The only one. You can learn about that and many other things from Lincoln's Ghost, 2009. You learn about an overview of his life. Are you familiar with the 1838 speech that Lincoln gave? He talks against mob law, and he talks about the Declaration of Independence and why these things are so important to us. Are the president's powers unlimited? Can the president make law?
No.
His powers are limited. And Lincoln's Ghost returns and tells about that because it goes over all the political speeches and writings, letters of Mr. Lincoln. Now, are you aware that Lincoln wrote poetry?
No.
Well, one of his poems is like this. He wrote it when he was very young. He was still in school. Abraham Lincoln is my name. I wrote it here, pen, in haste and speed, and left it here for fools to read. He wrote long passages of long things about life, and he wrote even about a wild bear chase. He memorized long passages of Shakespeare and Robert Burns. He loved poetry. When he was in his poetizing mood, he said many interesting things. Abraham Lincoln is my name. Someday I'll be good. God knows when. Anyhow, there was a lot of poetry that he did. You can find out about that in Lincoln's Ghost, Thoughts on Life. Now, they say I tell a great many stories. Well, I reckon I do. Here's an example. One day I was riding through the woods on my horse, and I met a woman coming the other direction on her horse, so I stopped, pulled my horse over to let her pass. And as she got up to me, she looked at me and she said, I do believe you're the ugliest man I ever saw. I said, Madam, you're probably right, but I can't help it. To which she said, no, but you could stay home. Now, I don't mind my face. It's you folks out there that's got to put up with it. I told about a lot of stories and how I use stories to get, it's not the story itself, but what it does to my listeners to get the point across to them that I'm trying to convey. In Lincoln's Ghost Tells Stories, you can learn about that. You can buy these things like $20 a piece, or if you get all four of them, you can get for $75. You get a 4-pack, or you can just get each individual one. Now, before I go a little further, this store here rents and sells costumes all year long, even Abraham Lincoln's costumes. So Colleen can help you with that. Now, there's some things I think are wrong about the way people remember Abraham Lincoln and what they make them do. Some school teachers insist that their students memorize the Gettysburg Address, and I think that's totally ridiculous because I didn't have it memorized. Why should a school child memorize it? Now, it may have some good things, but I'm going to tell you how that happened. November 19th, 1863, dawn overcast and cold. And it didn't clear off like it has today. It stayed cold. Well, I was invited there to give a speech, but I wasn't the main speaker. I was just to give the closing remarks. So I wrote down a little speech on a couple of pieces of paper, gave it to some people who were at the hotel that I stayed at the night before, and then I rented a horse the next morning and rode out to the cemetery, the Memorial Cemetery, to honor those who had fallen at Gettysburg. A great throng of people there that day, and well, the main speaker, he spoke well over 2 hours, and I was cold, tired, and hungry, and I'm sure everybody else did. I kept my hat on and kept my gloves on because it was cold that day. Well, when it came my turn, I stood up, took out my speech, took out my specs so I could read it, and I began. I looked up at the audience occasionally, but I referred to my speech. 70 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation, so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on the great battlefield of that war. We are met to dedicate a portion of it as the final resting place of those who have given their lives that that nation might live. It was altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men living and dead struggled here, consecrated it far above our poor power and detract. It is for us, the living rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work that they have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us, here dedicated, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. The nation shall, under God, have a new birth of freedom. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Well, I was done, much to the surprise of the folks there. I folded up the speech, turned it in my pocket, took out my glasses, sat down, figuring I'd given a pretty poor speech. But on my way back on the train to Washington, I rewrote it just in case it was to be published, so I'd have something I'd be proud of. Now there are 5 versions of it. But I gave you the one that was given. Now, what do you know about Lincoln?
I know that he was a free man and he wanted all other men to be free too. That I know.
Yeah, that's true. It took us a while. This nation, all men are created equal. It took us a while in a great civil war in order to accomplish that. What do you know about Mr. Lincoln?
He believed in law and order.
That's true, he did. He's against mob law because that's where there's no law. And he says there's no grievance that's great enough that justifies mob rule. Work through the system to get rid of bad laws, should they exist, and sometimes they do. What do you know about Mr. Lincoln?
He freed the slaves.
Well, yeah, basically he only freed those in the South, in the Confederacy, that he could do as president of the United States. During the war, he could free those in the southern states. He didn't free all of them. The 13th and 14th Amendment did that, but they were put into effect while he was still president. Now, how come Lincoln being elected for the second term? What do you suppose he'd do today for a living?
He could be a
Farmer.
Well,
the stilt guy in the circus.
He could. He probably couldn't split rails, and he probably couldn't build log cabins, and he probably couldn't be a surveyor or an attorney because you have to go to school for those things nowadays. He couldn't be president of the United States again because he'd already was elected for 2 terms. I was thinking he might be able to sell his pennies or something.
There you go.
Well, anyhow.
He could be a large and tall model.
He could be a large and tall model. Now, some people called me Honest Dave, but you know that silly name came from my cousin Dennis Hanks when I was running for president. He came up with that. Honest Dave, the rail splitter. But I guess people like that kind of stuff. You know, I often had debates with people. In my 1858 run for the Senate, I was running against the incumbent who was for slavery, and I was against slavery. But while he was one of my best friends, in fact, he loaned me money to go to Washington, D.C. after I'd been elected. And he even, a guy named Schmooze, loaned me the money so I could buy my first suit when I went to the legislature. Holman's Boots. Well, anyhow, thanks for coming, and I hope you can celebrate Lincoln's life and his principles. You can learn more, like I say, in buying those CDs or DVDs. And thank you for coming. My fellow citizens, I bid you a fond and affectionate farewell.